else they might come and arrest you in Bangladesh. Okay. We're made it to the crest of the hill and we're going downhill. Remember, downhill meaning not bad. If you're going downhill, you're picking up speed.
All right.
So it's good. The Rebbe is explaining how to beat the Greek. And there's only one way to beat the Greek. Siras Nefesh, Miyachidush Nefesh. Every other level of the Nefesh has an opponent, Mitzad the Nefesh Bamis. And therefore, whatever level of success a person could achieve on that level, that success might be fleeting by virtue of the fact that it might be overcome at a later date by a ratzon, a desire that's more powerful for something shaykh to the Nefesh Bamis, or an idea that seems to contradict and counteract whatever idea the person had in terms of seichel as to why it was the Mesiras Nefesh, connecting to God, is such an important thing. Whereas if it's coming from Etzem Nefesh, Etzem Nefesh is no opposition. And that's Vav. And in Zion, the Rebbe explains the same idea, continues explaining the same idea, that the victory that's brought about as a result of Mesiras Nefesh from Yechidush Nefesh is complete. So again, there's no opposition. We're going to finish the first paragraph in Zion. Let's just start from the beginning of Zion and we'll pick up from there. The victory that's brought about as a result of the Aved of Mesiras Nefesh is a complete victory. The Neisavah said that in addition to the fact that Aved the Mesiras Nefesh, the service of Mesiras Nefesh, Liyesavah Mitzad Etzem, since it's coming from the essential connection that the Jew has with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, it penetrates to all the powers of the soul. That's what we're talking about outside. Ad l'koyach ha'maisa, even to the power of action, the lowest level of the soul, the lowest level of us, and it's powered by the lowest level of the soul, nefesh shebachol inyonav, that relative to this person, were there to be a revelation of etzem in the shama, in this person's conscious life, so therefore all of his reality will be nikar, it will be recognized as dos tut a Mesiras Nefesh Dekiyid. This is what a Mesiras Nefesh Dekiyid does. Valderech Mashakosa Ba'avram, similar to what it said by Avram, as we saw. Ekev Shesham Avram B'Keili. Ekev, the word Ekev means since, but in this context it's being referred to as Ekev, as heel. The heel of Avram, listen to the voice of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shayidei Mesiras Nefesh Shalai, through Avram's Mesiras Nefesh. Pa'al, because Shegam ha'ekev Shalai, Shama, even his heel, Ois Zion in the middle, even his heel heard, Hateher, Tzivu HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Right? Meaning all of Avram's being was connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. On the side I see there's a little note there. I don't know whether you can read the note. I can barely read the note. But a mashal that's brought in Chassidus to help explain this is Shabbos. Why does a person keep Shabbos? So a person can keep Shabbos. Now there might be stages in the person's Shmir Shabbos, right? But a person can keep Shabbos because it makes sense to have a day during the week where I detach from everything else. And it's very nice. I like Shabbos. I mean, I think most of us like Shabbos, right? Mm-hmm. So, the kid who's starting to keep Shabbos or hang around on Shabbos in the Chabad on campus. So yes, obviously we learned in the previous Maimer there's an aspect of Etzem and Neshama in that too. Because there's an aspect of Etzem and Neshama in everything we do that's Jewish. Okay, that being said, if you were to ask that person, he'd explain to intellectually why it's a nice thing and he likes it and he likes being around all these people and he enjoys the rabbi and the Rebbitzins Challah is unbelievable. And he'd explain to you all sorts of reasonable explanations as to why it is that he spends Friday night in Chabad house. Okay, fine. That's good. Baruch Hashem. And that's good. So he's going to, and the fact that he can explain it to you so clearly, it's going to probably, it's a sign that he's probably going to keep doing that because he likes it and you see that he understands it, etc. Okay. there'll come a point where it becomes a very important part of what he wants from his life. Right? It'll be part of Ratzon, a little higher than Seichel. Right? This is what he wants, and it's very in line with his general agenda as to what life should be about, and he really looks forward to it, and he mamish wants to go there, and it's exciting, etc., etc., etc. There's that level of Shmir Shabbos, and that might be shaykh to someone who's taka Shemir Shabbos and Frum, etc., etc. Why they want to do all these things? How about the things they don't want to do? I don't know. And maybe they happen, maybe they don't happen. I mean, they might happen, but only because I don't want to feel crummy about myself. So I don't want that either. Mm-hmm. Right? Okay. And then there's a level of connection to the Eibishter that the Jew realizes, wait a minute, this is just who I am, what I am, and there's no other possibility. That's Etzem and Neshama. And that doesn't have to be some huge explosion of Mesiras Nefesh because someone's trying to kill you. It can also just be a very, very deep appreciation of the fact that this is who I am and there is no other alternative. Not in a bad way, just this is just who I am. I mean, why do you breathe? Well, I don't want to breathe. I mean, I breathe because you breathe. I mean, that's what people do. I don't have to think about breathing. Okay. Well, why don't you go into the water and breathe? That's not who I am. I can't go in the water and breathe. Fish go in the water and breathe. That's not who I am. I breathe this way. Okay, so a Jew can relate, if not every mitzvah, certain mitzvahs that way. This is just who I am. This is what I do. And there's no possibility of doing anything else. And most people, if they were to think about it, they relate to Shabbos that way. There's no havamina. They're getting into a car on Shabbos. It's not happening. I mean, if they do have to get into a car on Shabbos, which sometimes does happen, if your wife happens to be giving birth, so it's the strangest thing in the world. It's completely bizarre and it's weird and you feel funny doing it. Okay, yeah, you're doing it. Of course you're doing it. Right? In the army, sometimes you get into a Jeep on Shabbos. So it's a strange thing. This feels weird. Why? Well, because that's just so completely antithetical to who you are. Well, interesting enough, why do you get into the Jeep on Shabbos? Hopefully you should. The fact that getting into the Jeep on Shabbos is weird is a problem. On a certain level. Why? Well, because that's what's supposed to happen. That's what the Eibishter wants now. So it might be relative to Shabbos, the person has a very, very powerful connection to the mitzvah and the Eibishter through that mitzvah. But relative to some aspect of Shulchan Aruch and Pikuach Nefesh, etc., so he hasn't internalized that to such an extent, so it feels strange getting into a car on Shabbos when he has to. This is what God wants right now. God wants you to get into the car on Shabbos just like he wants you to have made Kiddush an hour before. What's the difference? It's all him. Oh, so that might be harder. Right? That's an even deeper level. Right? That's very hard. That really is an unbelievable place to be. Right? Okay. And it's not that he doesn't feel funny because he doesn't feel for Shabbos. He doesn't feel funny about it because it's just what there is. Right now, that's what the Kadosh Baruch Hu wants. Why? I don't know. So that Mesiras Nefesh Techiyid is just, it's impossible not to, right? As we said, it's this way and there is no other way. Right? And if it's Seichel, someone might be able to convince me otherwise. If it's Ratzon, I might have a very powerful Ratzon otherwise. If it's Etzem, it's like saying, right, we talked about earlier, right? I'll let you live if you let me cut off your head. No such thing. It doesn't exist. There's no opposition. The Baveda al Pitam Vadas, relative to Veda al Pitam Vadas, reason. Even the level that's beyond Tam Vadas, Akshurim Tam Vadas, Ratzon, Shayach Shir Menagid, as we said, there are powers of the Nefesh HaBahamis that are contrary to those powers of the Nefesh HaLokis. Mashenken Kishima'eru Megala, when he arouses and reveals Bechinas Yechida Shaloi, his Yechida, Ein Shayach Shir Menagid. There's no opposition. V'lo Yored Ela Sheviz Galus Bechinas Yechida Shebenefesh. When there is a revelation at this level of Yechida Shebenefesh, how does it pale Gamal Nefesh HaBahamis? This doesn't just affect the Nefesh HaLokis, it affects the Nefesh HaBahamis. This person's conscious reality is completely connected to Elokus. She'etzem Achumri is the Nefesh HaBahamis, the essential material aspects of the Nefesh HaBahamis, Mishafek Minakotza Lakotza, are transformed from one extreme to another. And the even the person's conscious reality is completely and totally connected to the Eibishter. So now the Rebbe is going to start answering questions about Chanukah. And now we understand why Neres Chanukah are different than Neres HaMikdash. One of our questions was, why is it we celebrate a miracle that happened with a 7-branch candelabra with an 8-branch candelabra, right? And we also noticed the difference in terms of time, right? Now, time we basically explained already. One of the first things the Rebbe said, the whole Indian of Hanukkah is to illuminate the dark, so we have to light the licht at dark. But why 7, why 8? Okay, well, we talked about 8 also being L'mayla Min HaTeva. Hanukkah is a level of L'mayla Min HaTeva, and that's dafka, that level that's able to illuminate the dark. Al Pi Teva, there's a reality called darkness. Right? And I can't extract myself from darkness. Al Pi Teva, well, it's dark. The natural reality right now is darkness. Okay. But the line in the Gemara, the prisoner can't free himself. If I'm in prison, so I can't free myself. I need someone who's not in prison, who's not limited like I'm limited to take me out of this state of limitation. Okay, so there has to be something beyond the limitation of Teva, which allows me to elevate myself beyond Teva. Okay, and illuminate Teva.
What's Teva? Darkness?
Nature.
Nature.
Wow.
It's good.
It's a good one today.
Where's mine? You said you were gonna.
I mean, you have to let me know, Doug. I cleaned the machine today. I had all this energy. I cleaned the machine. It's a clean machine.
Alright, well, next
I
time.
let me know.
Okay.
Send me a little message. Will you make me a cup of coffee? I'll make you a cup of coffee.
Okay.
More than happy. Share my Brazilian brew. Okay. So what's the difference? Ki Inyan Chanukah, and now some of this we've already seen. Some of it we haven't. Ki Inyan Chanukah, and even those things we're going to see, we're going to understand them more deeply, having explained everything we've explained in the last 7 chapters. Ki Inyan Chanukah hu avoided Mesiras Nefesh mitzad bechinas yichida. Chanukah is a revelation of the level of Yechida Shebenefesh, the essence of our soul. That's what the whole story of Chanukah is about. That's what the Maccabim were all about. That's why they did what they did. Al Pi Seichel, what they did was ridiculous. Al Pi Ratzon, why would anybody want to go die? Right? Okay, so we've talked about that. They might come to a point where I want to give up my life for something I believe in. Okay. I could also just as equally want to fight another day. Right? To live to fight another day. That's also a reasonable thing to want. They were in a state of azoy v'nitandresh. There is no such thing as allowing this to continue. L'mayla mi'ishtalshlu sheba'adam. Beyond the natural state of a person. Meaning the revealed natural state. Lochen hem ches neres. Therefore, there are 8 candles. Why? As we said earlier, the mispar ches, the number 8, kashur, is connected. Kanal sifal of the Rebbe. It's not that the Rebbe doesn't remember that he told us this in the first chapter. Is connected with im bechinas shelamayda mishtalshlis, a level beyond. Now again, the word ishtalshlis means orderly downward emanation. Right? Lihishtalshel is to move downwards in an orderly way. Right? The word shalshelet is a chain-like downward emanation of godliness. Where does that happen most obviously? In the 4 worlds, Atzilus, Bria, Yetzirah, Asiya. Those are the 4 worlds of Atzilus is not a created world, but those are the 4 worlds where there's a reality that we've talked about, Vador Mamale, light that fills vessels. So there's, so to speak, something along the lines of finite reality, even in Eilam Atzilus. What exists in Eilam Atzilus in a revealed way that doesn't exist above Eilam Atzilus in a revealed way? Something that you've all heard of and we've talked about. You've all heard of it. Now love Dafka, all of you were in the room when we talked about it, but we've all heard of it. When if I have to say it, you go, oh yeah, okay.
Yes, question.
What state of reality is revealed in Eilam Atzilus that is not revealed above Eilam Atzilus?
The spheres.
Oh, beautiful. 10 spheres. Doc, you're the best. All right, 10 spheres. That's what's revealed in Eilam Atzilus. Write it down so you'll never forget it. Right? 10 spheres. That's what's revealed in Elam Atzilus. In other words, 10. Wow. So to speak, an expression of godliness in limited, so to speak, finite reality. Now, obviously it's not finite relative to what you and I would call finite, but there is some place, so to speak, in that God. It's good. This is the Eibishter. Elam Atzilus is a Kadosh Baruch Hu himself. Right? But yet a Kadosh Baruch Hu allows in himself to be, that there should be a revelation of 10. 10 spheres. And when he saw them, what did he say? And this is for sure. He said, Helchut. Helchut. It's not even smiling. Those are the only two Dutch words I know. That's it. That's all I know is Helchut. But that's good to know, right? I mean, if you're going to know something, those are pretty good words. It means very good. Helchut. I had a Dutch friend who, anytime you ask him, Helchut.
Who's that?
He's unfortunately in Gan Eden now. His name was Yehuda Groentman. He was born in Amsterdam, but he grew up in Maastricht. He lived in Maastricht. No, he'd be 80 now. Wonderful, wonderful person. So, but he taught me a little Dutch. It's a little. Also taught me how to drink coffee. That's why I'm
coffee.
eternally grateful to him. He got the milk and the sugar out of my coffee and taught me how to drink coffee. Right? So there you go. That's a great present to give a friend. So the natural order is 7. That's Seder Ishtalshlus. That's why each of the worlds, the most revealed aspect of the spheres in every world are the 7 lower spheres that come from the 3 higher spheres. Chachma, Bina, and Das are the source of the 7 midos, and that's the most revealed reality of every world. So, and that's the world was created with the, so to speak, with the 7 midos of Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, etc. Okay, that's the natural order. 7 days of the week. Ubedugmas achiluk, and this is similar to the difference between the kinor, the harp, in the beis of Mikdash. And the harp in the beis of Mikdash that David HaMelech made famous, Shahaya Shel Shivas Ninim, it had 7 strings, the harp in the beis of Mikdash. The kinor Shel Yemes Mashiach, what did Chazal tell us? A Gemara in Erechim, that the harp of Yemes Mashiach will have Shmeina Ninim, 8. Meaning there'll be a new teva. The new teva will be l'mayla min teva. The new nature will be beyond nature, beyond anything that we called nature up until this point. The Avshe Beis HaMikdash Makam Achim Makudesh Ba'olam, that even though the Beis HaMikdash is the holiest place in the world, in space there's a place called Mikdash. In time there's a place called Shabbos, and those two things are similar in that they're the holiest levels in the realm in which they exist. The holiest level of time is called Chabad. Right? The holiest level in space is called Mikdash. There's other levels of holiness in time called Yom Tov. What does that relate to? Eretz Yisrael in general. Eretz Yisrael in general is the level of Yom Tov in space. Yerushalayim, Mikdash specifically, is Shabbos in space. A space that's holier than all other space. A space that when a person walks into that space, they feel more connected to Elokus. It's easier to connect to Elokus in that space than any other space. Shabbos. It's easier to feel connected to the Eibishter on Shabbos than it is on a Tuesday. What's the difference? Is more Eibishter on Shabbos? No. Is he more revealed on Shabbos? Yes. There's no question. So therefore, it's easier to tap into that. Are there people who don't feel that? Yes. Why? Well, you have to have some sensitivity to be sensitive to it. I mean, a complete and total lack of sensitivity, and so I won't feel anything special on Shabbos. I won't even feel, if I'm completely and totally lacking any spiritual, godly sensitivity whatsoever, I won't even feel anything on Yom Kippur. That's very rare for a Jew. A Jew from Yom Kippur is like any other day of the year, is extremely rare, and even in the times of the Gemara, that was the way of understanding a Jew was completely disconnected from the Jewish people. He wasn't connected to Yom Kippur. Didn't fast on Yom Kippur. 1,500 years ago, right? Today it's also the same. 1,500 years ago, when basically everybody was frum, right? That was the sign of a Yid who was just completely out of the ballpark, not even close. No Yom Kippur. Because to not be sensitive to Yom Kippur, you have to really lack sensitivity, completely and totally. And if you and I go through Yom Kippur and don't feel any movement, don't feel moved by anything, we sort of wonder, what's wrong with me? Like, am I so dulled? Right? Okay. So there's different levels of revelation, and those different levels of revelation it doesn't mean there's more God, less God. The Eibishter's the Eibishter. He's everywhere. He's all the same. But is he easier or harder to access? Right? How sensitive do I have to be to access him in that place? Okay, so there are places that are harder, places that are easier. Beis Hamikdash is a place that's very easy to access Elokus in that place. I find it hard to imagine that people walked in the Beis Hamikdash and didn't understand what was going on. But even though it was such a holy place, Ubefrat, particularly the kinnor shel Beis Hamikdash. What was unique about the kinnor, the harp shel Beis Hamikdash? Shehu inyan hamshach Hashem Havaya. It was one of the vehicles for bringing down the revelation of the level of godliness beyond nature that is the source of nature. Right? Meaning, it's the source of nature. It's brought down into the world. The source of light in this world is Shem Havaya. The source of what you and I call Kelim is Shem Elokim. That's why that name of God is actually written in plural, because it's that aspect of godliness that is the source of plurality and responsible for plurality. We've talked about God can be revealed in infinite reality, which is oneness. God can be revealed in finite reality, because God is not limited by being infinite or finite. He's beyond both. Okay. So the expression of Elokus in finitude is called Kelim, vessels. That's what we call it in Chassidus. Okay. Shem Havaya is the source of the Or, the infinite Or. And that's drawn down into the world, so the world is a very healthy place. And the Kelim that are revealing that light are revealing it in a healthy way, in a revealed way, and that's the Beis Hamikdash. The Kinnor is Oisius. How's the word spelled? So it has 4 letters. Right, even though they're not in the order, this isn't their order, but these are the 4 letters. The Oisius Chaf Vav, right, the first and third letter. Gematria de Shem Havaya, that's the numerical value of the name Yud Kei Vav Kei, 26. Ner, candle. Ner Havaya Nishmas Adam. The Ner of Hashem is the neshama of a person. In other words, the revelation, the shining, the light of godliness of Yud Kei Vav Kei is drawn down into the Mikdash through the Kinnor. So the Mikdash is a place of revealed godliness. The Mikdash is not a place where you're going to wonder whether or not there's anything that makes this place go. Nevertheless, Mikol Makom, Rak Shleim is the Seder Ishtalshalos, but it's still only the highest level in Seder Ishtalshalos. And there's 2 very obvious expressions of that. It ends in space, and it actually ended in time. Right? In space, there was a space outside of the Beis Hamikdash. Right? Meaning it was a holy place, but that didn't transform the whole world into a state of holiness. Right? It itself was a holy place, similar to Shabbos. Right? Shabbos is an incredibly holy place in time, but it ends. And Yom Rishon is Yom Rishon again. And Yom Rishon is yes, Yom Rishon gets its koyach from Shabbos. That's true. Okay, that being said, Yom Rishon is chol. And you and I have a ceremony every Motzei Shabbos to make a clear distinction between something called Kodesh and something called chol. And that means something holy and something we profane. But I mean, but that's such a, it's not secular, it's not profane, it's not holy. Right? Okay, what does that mean? Shabbos ends. That means Shabbos is limited. Shabbos is an incredibly holy place in time, but it has a beginning and it has an end. The Mikdash is an unbelievably holy place in space that has a beginning and it has an end. Interesting enough, it also has a beginning and end in space, in time, because the first and second Beis Hamikdash were destroyed. They existed for a certain amount of time and then they were destroyed. Just something that we should all know. So since we're talking about it, we'll throw it out. How much time did they exist?
500 years.
What?
500 years.
Well, it's a guess, but it's close.
Yeah.
400, closer to 400.
Closer to 400. That's a better guess.
410.
410. Beautiful. The first Beis Hamikdash was 410. How long was the second Beis Hamikdash?
370 something.
No.
Bigger or smaller? The second Beis Hamikdash.
Smaller.
Bigger in space, bigger in time.
Oh.
Where's long?
420 years. How do you remember? Come on, Doc, you should remember this. We've learned it. This is going to be Moshe's favorite mimer once we get to it.
What?
You can take it out.
Where?
That'll be you. It's in your notebook, you remember.
The oil that we burned in the menorah was cassis, crushed. Gematria 420, Gematria 410. Okay, just remember that word and remember how long the beis hamikdash was around. I know if I asked when was the Declaration of Independence in America, you'll know. So that's embarrassing. Shalom might even know it. And he didn't even. Okay, no, I didn't say you have to. I said, Mike, you don't have to, right? But Americans all know it, and they're so excited. And as a matter of fact, it's 250 years next year. Okay, so I assume they're going to get all excited and make a big shturim and blah, 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 blah,
Trump
blah, blah,
is
blah.
doing
It's Trump. Donald's going to, oh my
Trump
goodness.
is doing a 1 year carnival in Iowa. It won't stop.
Really?
It's a 24/7, a year straight. It's gonna be huge.
Tucker, if he's Tucker, he's definitely going to make something happen, right? Because he's not a boring person. There's no doubt about that.
It's gonna be huge.
But Biden would sleep through the whole thing and not even know what happened. But no, Trump will definitely make it exciting. There's no that you can like him or hate him, but it's going to be exciting. That's for sure. Okay, I didn't even think of that. Tucker, he'll be there. Okay, so
250 years next year will be the birthday of the U.S. Army.
there you go. Okay, but not on July 4th. Before that, I assume.
Yeah.
Because they had to fight in order to win.
Right.
There you go. Okay. So we know those dates. So and I think obviously we know why we know those dates, and we don't have to rip our clothes and pretend that we don't know those dates and try to forget them. There's no way. We don't have to go there. We've got more important things to do in our lives. But you can also remember that. It's not a problem. You're allowed to remember how many years there was a beis hamikdash. Second beis hamikdash 420, first beis hamikdash 410. Second beis hamikdash was bigger in time and bigger in space. It was bigger than the first beis hamikdash, and it lasted longer than the first beis hamikdash. There were certain things that weren't there, right? I mean, the Aron was not in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, right? The holiest kli was not the Kodesh HaKadoshim. The Holy of Holies was an empty room. There was nothing there.
So based on this idea, then the third beis hamikdash not be limited by.
Completely different level. Beis Mashiach is 8. No end in space, no end in time. Meaning, even though the beis hamikdash will have dimension and it will end in space, and you'll be able to walk out of it, but the level of godly revelation that will exist in the beis hamikdash is going to exist outside the beis hamikdash also. Right? So that limitation won't exist, and it will exist forever. It won't be limited by time or space. So the light inside will shine outside, so to speak.
It's gonna be fun.
Ooh, it's going to be wild. Right? There's going to be a lot of good stuff. A lot of good stuff. But probably, I don't know, who knows? Chacun son goût, you can't, everybody has their own taste. But I think probably one of the things, if not the thing, that you guys are going to enjoy more than anything else in Immerse Mashiach, you're going to go to the Rebbe's Farbrengen.
Wow.
You're going to be blown away. You're just going to be blown away. Go, wow, this is something else. Right? The Rebbe's going to Farbrengen again with us. Right? We're going to see him Farbrengen. Right?
It's amazing.
And then there's going to be a whole lineup, right? There'll be a whole sheet of paper on the wall, and when the Alter Rebbe is teaching, and when the Mittler Rebbe is teaching, the Baal Shem Tov is doing his thing, the Maggid is doing his thing, and Rabbi Akiva is teaching Mishnayos, and Rav and Abai are going to be saying over Sugyas and Gemara, and it's going to be unbelievable. Carnival, shoo! This will be the ultimate non-stop carnival, right? And it won't be in Iowa; it'll be everywhere, even in Iowa, right? Postville. Yeah, that'll be in Postville. Right? The Mittler Rebbe will be saying, there'll be an 8-hour class in Chassidus with the Mittler Rebbe in the middle of the day, right? Only for those, there'll be a little warning, for tough people. So the Kinor is that which draws down Elokus. Nevertheless, what? That Elokus that was drawn down into the first beis hamikdash was, so to speak, the Elokus being limited. But okay, yes, meaning the revelation was limited to the extent that it took place in a particular place. And it only lasted for a particular amount of time. Therefore, What was the harp? Shiva Nimim, bringing down and revealing the most powerful level of godly reality in nature. Not allowing nature to hide Elokus, but allowing nature to reveal Elokus. But what level? That level of Elokus that's responsible for natural reality. Still the Eibishter, right? But we talk about higher levels, lower levels, greater tzimtzum, more constriction, less constriction. Okay, that level of Elokus. Galor Mamala. Mashain came be a Mashiach. That's not the case in the Mashiach. She Gilu Yishulamaylam Yiseiru Yishtash. Right, so it'll be a revelation that's beyond the natural order, meaning we will see that nature will not only not conceal Elokus, those rules of nature that are considered somehow immutable will be undone. There'll be some other aspect of reality that'll be beyond anything we experience now. Shem Havaya de La'elo, the higher level of Shem Havaya, meaning Shem Havaya that's not simply, so to speak, the map of the light that emanates down through the four worlds. Yud is Elam Atzilus, K is Elam Abriya, Vav is Elam Yitzira, the lower level K is Elam Asiya, those four worlds, four letters, and not that level of Shem Havaya. A level of Shem Havaya called Havaya de La'elo. Infinite godly light, absolutely infinite godly light. Therefore, so the harp will have to be a different harp. It's drawing down a different level of godliness. So there's the level of 8. V'zeu gamatam. This is also the reason. The other Rebbe is going to talk about 2 times, because we only talked about 1 time. The 1 time we talked about is when lechatchila you should light. Shalom, the others here. Okay. When you should light the candles in the beginning. Okay, but until when are you allowed to light the lights? What's the latest you can light? There's also that we have to understand, and that the Rebbe will explain here. V'zeu gamatam. This is also the reason. Sheneres Chanukah chalukim mineres hamikdash. This is also why neres Chanukah are separate. They're different than neres hamikdash. Gam bizman hadlakosam. Now we already mentioned this, but now we understand on a deeper level. Masha mitzvah shel neres Chanukah mishatishka chama. The mitzvah of ner Chanukah is when the sun sets. Ki dafka yedei gilui. Specifically as a result of the revelation, the bechinas yechido, of this level of the essence of the soul, shel lamaydu mishtashlos b'adam, which is beyond the natural order in a person, the revealed natural order, conscious natural order of a person. Me'irin gam es hacheshech. Even darkness is illuminated. Why? There is no darkness there. Right? Meaning there's only, there's not, to a certain degree, there's not even or. It's beyond or, and it's beyond lack of or. Or is infinite reality. Okay, Etzem is beyond infinite reality. It's not limited by being infinite. We've talked about this. Infinite is limited. It can't be expressed in finite. Etzem can. Essence can. Right? So the level of Yechidah, the level of Chaya Nefesh, is a transcendent level of Nefesh that by definition is not part of your conscious reality. That doesn't mean it can't resonate in your conscious reality. It's not part of your conscious reality. It might be the source of your conscious reality. Ratzah, will, we've talked about that. Everything you do consciously is ultimately a function of your will. Okay, that's true. But what you're doing is not an act of will. You're moving your finger. What you're doing is an act of movement, an act of speech, an act of hearing, seeing, whatever, talking, whatever you're doing. And I don't define that action in terms of the ratzon of it. I define the action in terms of the revealed expression of it, even though I know the motivating force behind it. So the motor that moves it all is your ratzon. I get that, but I don't say, oh, he's willing. He's not willing, he's speaking. Yes, he's speaking because he's willing himself to speak. I get that, but that's not, how do you and I define the reality that we're experiencing? By the revealed part of it, not the hidden, and in Chassidus again, the makif, the all-encompassing part of it. No, the revealed part of it. So what's he doing? He's moving his leg. Why? He wants to, but we don't say he's wanting. He's moving. Okay. Etzem? Now, how we'll define an event, that's it. But etzem is, as we said earlier, the etzem of every single level of reality. The essence of your movement is the essence of your soul. The essence of every aspect of you, the essence of every aspect of your soul is the essence of your soul. So it's revealed everywhere, which is why, again, that it not only is it the most powerful expression of you, but it will also illuminate all aspects of you. So even that which might seem dark will ultimately be illuminated by that level of reality. Ki davka al yedei gilui b'chinas yechida shelamayla mishtashlus, that's beyond mishtashlus. Sheba adam meirim gam es hachashich. You illuminate the dark. Right? We talked about it before. I just see a little note over here. These notes, I don't know when I wrote these notes. Couldn't be, there's two stages in seeing old notes on the side of the page is what language they're in. At a certain point, they stopped being in English. Right? So it's just, especially Chassidus, it's just easier to express. So this is obviously not so old. I can actually read it. I don't know whether you can. But Mendel did say that the most joyous years of his life were the years he spent in Siberia. How can that possibly be? It just doesn't make any sense. Well, when you think about it on the level of Yechida, the darkest place he was in, he illuminated so powerfully with the Mesiras Nefesh that he expressed while he was there. So there was, on a certain level, the greatest expression of light, right? Even though it's coming from a place beyond light. That's exactly why he could illuminate even that part of his life. That doesn't mean he didn't like his family. He liked his family. He was reunited with his family, Baruch Hashem, in England. His family was in England at that point. They got out of Russia. So he got out from England. The particulars of the story, I think, it's an amazing story. I believe it was Harold Wilson, the Prime Minister of England around the time that Richard Nixon was the President of the United States, and Richard Nixon, for all the bad press he gets, was quite a master at diplomacy. So he was involved in something called détente, which was opening up the West to they called the East. It wasn't really the East. I mean, China and Russia. First China and also Russia. Nixon went to China also. It was really wild. So the British Prime Minister at the time, I believe he was the first Western leader who actually went to Russia. I think he preceded Nixon, Harold Wilson, I think it was, I'm pretty sure. So there's a story. There was a gentleman in England who was an Askan, a Jew. He was one of the people in the Jewish community that had a lot to do with Jewish affairs in general in England, and actually had a meeting with Harold Wilson at one point. I forget his name. Skinner pops in my head, but I'm not sure. Well, look, I wrote it down because I write these things down so I won't forget them forever. We heard this story here in Mayanot on Yud Shvat from Rabbi Feivish Vogel. All of a sudden, he just passed away about a month ago. He was a shaliach in England, and he knew this gentleman and heard the story from him. He had a meeting with Harold Wilson, so he went to 10 Downing Street, and he was waiting in the outer office to meet with Harold Wilson. Now, the meeting was a little late. I guess Harold Wilson had what to do, and I think it was Skinner, had to daven, mincha. So he didn't know what to do. He had this meeting with the Prime Minister of England, but he had the mincha. So he figured, well, let's just hope that he doesn't come out in the next, 6 minutes. And he quickly stood up and faced the corner of the room and started davening mincha. So the secretary called in and said that the person who's meeting you next is acting a little strange in the office and doesn't know exactly what to do. So Mr. Wilson came out and just didn't do anything, watched him, and when I think it was finished, so he took his 3 steps back and he didn't spit in the ground in Elena. But so Mr. Wilson asked him, can I ask you what you're doing? So he said, well, Mr. Prime Minister, as much as obviously I have great respect for you, but I also have even greater respect for God Almighty, and it happens to be that I had to pray the afternoon prayer before sunset, and I realized I had no time, and because we were a little delayed, so I prayed here. Fine. They went in the office, they talked for a while, Harold Wilson took out a small piece of paper. I don't know whether they had stick-up notes in those days, but something that size. Wrote a phone number on it, and he gave it to Mr. And said, "This is my private phone number that rings in this room. You don't have to go through my secretary. If you ever need anything, call this number. Someone who's as connected to God as you seem to be, and is a person of such values and holds by those values so dearly. I'd like to help if I could. So here's my phone. If you ever need anything, so please call." So when did he call? Harold Wilson went to Russia. Now, of course, what was going on in those days? No one knew, and it didn't take long for them to figure out, but no one knew that the Russians were starving. They had used all their money to build guns and fly to the moon or wherever they were flying. And their economy was an absolute disaster, and there was no food. So that was the reason they wanted connection to the West, that they would have trading partners. They had a lot of wheat, right? And we needed wheat. So they didn't want anybody to know this, but they were interested in trading with the West. Now, what they had to trade was certain goods and gashmis. What did the West want in return? I mean, to open things up, what did the West want in return? Human rights issues. What the West was asking from the Russians, meaning to go much easier on human rights, meaning letting people out of jail, not killing people, etc. Right? That was the card the West had in their hand. So one of the things that Mr. Wilson did was ask Brezhnev. I guess who was it? And then was it Brezhnev back then? Brezhnev and Nixon. I think probably still Brezhnev, right? Yeah, Khrushchev was Kennedy, and then Brezhnev. Yeah. So he asked Mr. Brezhnev to let certain prisoners out of Russia because of his meeting with Harold Wilson and his davening mincha in the office in 10 Downing Street. So he called up Mr. Wilson before he left and asked if the name of Mendel Futterfass could be added to the list of political prisoners who would be let out of Russia. And he was. And he came to England. Because this guy davened mincha in the Prime Minister's office and wasn't embarrassed to daven mincha in the Prime Minister's office. So Mendel got out of Russia. That's the story I heard. I obviously I wasn't there, but that's the story that Fivers Vogel told us on Yud Shvat about, must have been 20 years ago here, maybe even more, in the old building in Mayanot. We had a lunch for bringing on Yud Shvat because that was the only time he could come, so we sat with him for a couple of hours. He told unbelievable stories of his shlichus in England, just and that, but he also told that story, which wasn't him. I mean, he wasn't involved in the story, he just told about the story. Yeah. So Mendel talked about those years being his best years. Somehow he illuminated the darkness of Siberia with his etzem and neshama. Not only relative to this light, the darkness doesn't conceal. Furthermore, that which we perceive as dark is ultimately transformed into light. In other words, that which we might perceive as a vehicle that hides God, as a reality that hides Elokus, ends up being a reality that reveals Elokus very powerfully. What's that? Physical reality. Physical reality ends up being a source of incredible revelation, which is what the Beis Hamikdash is all about. That's the Beis Hamikdash. The Beis Hamikdash is taking physical reality and turning it into a kli to reveal Elokus. So all of these kelim in the Beis Hamikdash, the whole place is a place of unbelievable revelation. Okay, but it's still limited. The Yemei Mashiach will be even greater than that. Again, we've said it many times. One of the things the Rebbe said, there is a line in Chassidus that what's the difference between Mashiach, Yemei Mashiach, and what we experience now, that now there's two states of reality that exist in this room at this very moment. Created reality and godly reality. What are you and I aware of? Created reality. Right? What's also here? Godly reality. I just don't perceive it. I might understand intellectually that it's here. I guess I do, because that's what we're talking about, and you're all going like this. So you also understand intellectually that it's here, but it's not what I experience. Not experiencing godliness, I'm experiencing physical reality. I'm feeling my arms leaning on the table, and I have no problem understanding that my arms can lean on the table, and I'm not going to fall on the floor because the table's here. It's a wonderful table. Okay. So today we'll describe reality as follows: Metzias, existence, created existence, is the pshitus, is obvious, and Elokus, godly existence, is beischadshus, is something novel that I have to remind myself of. That's why we learn Chassidus first thing in the morning, to remind ourselves of that level of existence, right? Because otherwise I might forget about it, right? Chas v'sholem. Okay. Beis Mashiach, Elokus will be pshitus, godliness will be obvious, and created reality will be a chiddush, will be something I have to remind myself of. Now, what that looks like, I don't know, right? Because you and I, our experience is so completely contrary to that. But just like now, you and I have to sit and learn Chassidus in order to be aware of the godliness in our midst. So once the Rebbe said, we'll have to learn physics in order to understand that when you put the sitter on the table, it won't fall on the floor. Right? That somehow physical reality will have to be something we remind ourselves of. It is interesting that relative to tzaddikim, they always had to be reminded to eat and sleep. Right? That was something that wasn't, you and I don't have to remind ourselves to eat and sleep. We have to remind ourselves to finish Rambam. Eating and sleeping is pretty, that happens. Right? Every now and then there will be people at breakfast who weren't at chakras. I hope it's only every now and then. I'm just being done with chafskus. Certainly mincha. There seem to always be people there when you get there after mincha who couldn't have been at mincha. Right? But they're at lunch. Okay. So that's now. You make some Mashiach? Okay, so there'll be people at mincha. How many of those people will show up at lunch? Well, they might have to announce after mincha. Remember to go eat lunch. Right? Don't forget lunch. Okay, fine. That'll be interesting. V'zeo, I have a few more minutes. Let's do one short little paragraph. V'zeo, and now we're going to talk about also the last time you can light. V'zeo gamma, and this is Rabbi Kaplan will be talking about this in halacha class because it is very important, especially for us Lubavitch types who tend to go out and light with other people, and so we only get back late at night. And what's the latest we're allowed to light our own Chanukiah? V'zeo gamma shezman shel ner Chanukah hu ad starts at Shkia. But when does it go till? So in the Gemara it says, Ad shetichla regel min hashuk, until it stops the feet in the market, meaning until there's no one walking around in the market anymore. And how does the Gemara explain that? Ad dekalya rigla de tarmudai. This is the Gemara. Until they're stopped the feet of the tarmudai. So now the tarmudai were these people who were evidently very poor, and they used to be the last people in the market, and they would pick up things on the floor and sticks and stuff. They'd pick up anything they could find that was of any use at the end of the day in the market, because they were extremely poor, these tarmudai. And so they were always the last people in the market. So when they left the market, so then that was the last time you could light licht. Why? Why might that be? Right? If we know what Hanukkah lights are all about. Publicizing the miracle. Beautiful. I'm supposed to light in such a way that I publicize the miracle. If there's no one to publicize it to, so that's a problem. And that's la halacha. If you come home and you're the only person awake in the dorm and you light your licht, you're not kind of the mitzvah. Right? That's why Hanukkah, you might get woken up by a roommate saying, can you do me a favor? Just be awake for a minute, I'm lighting licht. He comes back at 2 a.m. from Mivtzoyim, so Beseder, so he might wake someone up. Hopefully there'll be a bunch of guys coming back and they'll light together, so they'll each see each other's candles, right? But someone has to see your candles. Okay, so that's the latest we can light. Right? So in the city that never stops, I guess you can light all the time, right? I mean, you can light much later at night. Obviously until it starts getting light out. Okay, so that's what the Gemara says. The Rebbe explains that in Pnimius. Tarmudai, who are these? Now, the Rebbe's not talking about those people, Tarmudai. He's talking about the fact that Tarmudai represent the following in Pnimius. Who are they? Hamerdim b'malchus shemayim, the ones who rebel against the kingship of heaven. Tarmud, The word Tarmud is Eisus Moredes, the one who rebels. And where are they? V'heim misakvim b'shuk. They're in the market, the rebellious ones. What's the market? Bechinas Reshus Rabim, the domain of many, which is what? So Reshus Rabim in Halacha means the public domain. But what does it mean in Pnimius? The domain of the many, the place that hides the domain of one. Reshus Yochid. What's Reshus Yochid? Godly reality, Hashem Echad. What's Reshus Rabim? That level of reality that hides the unity of God. So where do these Tarmudai hang out? Where do these rebellious ones hang out? In the market. What's the market? Reshus Rabim, the public domain. What's that? Ture de Pruda, the Rebbe says. Mountains of separation. Meaning a place where unity is concealed and multiplicity is revealed. A place where godliness is concealed. Hashem Echad. And reality, physical reality is very powerfully revealed. So that's these people. And what's the Ner Chanukah? So now, lo halacha, we're allowed to light until these people stop walking around. What does that mean in Pnimius? That we light the licht until the Tarmudai aren't found in the Reshus Rabim. In other words, the light of the Chanukiah illuminates reality, so there's no more state of separateness and rebellion. Va'al yedei neres Chanukah, through neres Chanukah, nase, what's brought about? Kilya rigu the Tarmudai, the doing away with the legs of the Tarmudai, meaning this state of rebelliousness is done away with, because the light of Chanukah, again, in Halacha we're talking about a place in time. In Pnimius we're talking about the effect of the Ner on the world. The effect of the Ner on the world, when you light Chanukah licht, you're supposed to light it in such a way that it does away with the notion of rebellion against God. It illuminates the Reshus Rabim, that place that reveals the opposite of Hashem Echad. You illuminate it with the light of Hashem Echad. God's one. So what's Kalya? So Kalya can mean two things. It can mean to destroy or elevate. The Shnei Perushim Bezeh, Sha'or de Ner Chanukah, that the light of Ner Chanukah, Michale u'milvatel, it destroys Rigla the Tarmudai, nullifies them, is mevatel them. They're no longer there. That's one understanding of the word. Sha'or d'ner chanukah kilayon. Right? This is the second shot. Right? Kilayon is destruction, but again, it can also mean a level of destruction that's an elevation. Kloisa nefesh. Kloisa nefesh is when the Jew gets so close to the Eibishter, he experiences kloisa nefesh, he loses sense of self. He's completely enveloped in godliness. All of us in Matan Torah, that's what happened to all of us. Kloisa nefesh. Kloisa nefesh can be such a state where the person actually dies, where their nefesh is so powerfully connected to the Eibishter that it can't be contained in their body anymore. So they died. That was not of an Aviyah. That was the sons of Aaron. The Neres Chanukah Peril Kiloyan, Klayo Miloshin Kilian and Kloisa Nefesh, Gamba Rigli Demudai. So on one level, the Ner Chanukah, one pshat is that it destroys the darkness. The second pshat, which is the more pneumistic pshat, is that it illuminates the dark. It doesn't destroy it. It brings it to a state of self-destruction. So the darkness is destroyed, but the connection to Elokus is very powerful. Shegam Merdim, even these ones who rebel, Yavei Lebechinas Kloisa Nefesh, will come to a state of Kloisa Nefesh, come to a state where their souls are completely and totally enveloped in godliness. Okay, so Ner Chanukah. So we haven't answered any new questions yet. We just answered on a deeper level the two questions that we had already answered. Now the Rebbe didn't even talk about lighting it in the dark. But we light it at Shkia. Why? Well, because it's a level of light that illuminates the dark. And we light it, we have 8, because 8 is L'mayla Miseder Yishtalshlus. Okay, now both of those we've seen, now we're going to have to see the rest. We'll answer all the rest of the questions next. The first question the Rebbe's going to answer, we'll see it, Sunday morning, Hashem, is the comparison to the cows of Sukkot. What's that all about? Right, so we had two questions. Simple pshat, the connection of Hanukkah to Sukkot. But the deeper level was, why dafka cows and Zbeach, what's that all about? Why are we connecting to that reality? You see.
You know what? I did not interrupt the class again. I withheld it.
I don't know, Doc, I'm getting